All right, guys. So I'll just reintroduce them because there's lots of people on Zoom. So Ryan Turner, who is associate professor in the School of the Environment, and he has a background in the government, in the Department of Department of Environment, whatever we call it today.
Yeah, whatever.
And he's the director of the Reef Catchment Science Partnership, which is a pretty cool little joint initiative between UQ and DETC that he's going to talk about. So I will hand it over to Ryan and give a presentation and do some questions.
Awesome. Well, thank you for first the invite and the introduction. And today I'm going to give you a bit of a journey of where things are at in the reef water quality improvement space, and then also take you through a bit of, not a case study, but some examples of what some real data is actually showing over the last decade and a bit. But there's also going to be a bit of a preamble of a selfless plug about the partnership, so which I have to do. But before I start, I'd like to acknowledge traditional owners of the land which we are learning and sharing and helping look after country, but more importantly, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners that help us sample. So we have quite a lot of samplers across the state that take water quality samples for us, help care for country, help us also care for country. We learn from them and they learn from us. It's really cool. Plus, you can see it's quite a lot of names on there and I would have missed people. I call it the Reef family. It's a big family. It started back in 2003, 2009 is when I joined. And there was about, I don't know, 2 or 3 dozen back there. It's now in a couple of hundred in the world that's adding to this space of science, which is really cool, looking after the reef. And more recently, this little baby's been launched. It's called the Catchment Water Quality Alliance, and it's a joint venture between Queensland Government, University of Queensland, who's been the Reef Catchment Science Partnership, and James Cook and Trop Water. So if you guys find anything interesting that I talk about today, come and chat to me. We can add you to the alliance. We can grow it. It's not a contractual group. There's no contracts or anything, but it's a set of people that are coming together to deliver for Reef. So here at UQ, inside the Catchment Water Quality Alliance, is the Reef Catchment Science Partnership. What is that? Basically, it's a small group, nowhere as big as you guys. I'm learning a lot about you guys today. We're only 13 at UQ and about another 23 at Queensland Government. So smallish group. And we're here to leverage what the Queensland Government can't do. So Queensland Government monitoring or science programs are very operational. They're designed that way. That's what public servants generally do. I'm on secondment from the Queensland Government right now to UQ. So they're really good at collecting data, massive programs, lots of infrastructure, multi-million-dollar things. But they collect that data for a purpose. It's usually a report. It's usually a dashboard or a widget, but they don't do much more with it. So the partnership was generated or created in collaboration with the Queensland Government to value add, to take data to information, and more importantly, take information to knowledge. We have a vision. Essentially, it's probably very similar to you guys: encourage collaboration, develop future leaders, enhance catchment and ecosystem resilience to improve water quality. That's probably the slight difference to you guys, is the water quality angle. That's our focal point. And it's a unique government collaboration model. So a lot of my staff actually sit inside the Queensland Government. So they are UQ staff, but they're also called non-payroll government employees, and they sit in the UQ government, in the government sector, in policy and in the science sector. We have a couple of research themes. We do proactive monitoring and compliance, points to source and diffuse source compliance. Massive program here, which is where the Alliance sits, is all around water quality monitoring and evaluation. There's a new human dimension space. Perfect.
It was stalling, lady.
We planned that. And I'm very new to academia. So my background is the private sector, government sector. I've only been at UQ since 22. And so I'm learning, but also growing this whole concept of HDRs, but very specifically HDRs that have impact in the community. So everything that our HDR students do has been agreed to by the Queensland Government and us. And we have industry supervisors on there as well, and they actually go and present their data. So the first 3 honours students we went to Tully Sugar, we presented to 4 CEOs, plus some farmers, some industry groups, bit confronting, but that's the real world. It's a real world that you guys will end up facing. So it's a really good experience. Just a highlight, and I thought this was probably a highlight that's very related to what you guys do. This is around the economic mechanisms and opportunity for point source offsets. So Joe McMahon is my research fellow that leads this section, and biodiversity is obviously on there. Conservation is kind of embedded in there, but he's working on a couple of projects. One's to help review the existing water quality offsets policy for the Queensland government, which is currently, I think it's already gone out for public consultation. So if you haven't had a chance to put a submission in, always can influence policy and legislation. Looking at some cost benefits analysis around restoration. We're working with a project called Place Based up in the Herbert, looking at yet again some natural capital stuff, and looking at the economics around that, economics and water quality. And one thing we're trying to push is this riparian restoration, looking at the federal government now are considering what some people call double dipping or stacking with offsets. They're now considering it, so there's co-benefits and you can actually claim them all in a certain metric. I'm not sure if the framework has been designed yet, but the reality is to restore catchments, we need money. And the amount of restoration that we need to do is huge, so we need a lot of money. So if we can start targeting in a responsible way, in a sustainable way, the carbon market, the water quality offset market, biodiversity market, why not? If we get natural improvement for conservation, biodiversity and water quality, why not? Like I said, we have research projects. We also have the Michael St. John War Memorial Scholarship. Those who knew Michael, he passed away 2 years ago, great mate of mine. Worked with him for 14 years. He convinced me to come from government over to UQ. And we offer our HDR students, not PhD, but honours and masters at $5,000 scholarship. The team I work with over at Queensland Government, they're called Water Quality Investigations. In this deck of slides, there's heaps of URL links and QR codes, so you can have a look at it later. There's a bunch of dashboards that these guys produce, which we also help them produce. Lots of reporting portals, lots of data, lots and lots of water quality data, all publicly available, all downloadable. Lots of interactive story maps. Have a look at your own leisure. So, who am I? I told you a bit about my background, a bit about the partnership. Why do I do what I do? Well, water. I'm super passionate about water. More passionate about beer. And I would love to join you this afternoon. I was hoping it would start at 3:30, but 4:30 I'm going to go to my daughter's end of year concert at school. So unfortunately, I won't be able to join you for a beer, but water is I look. But water is why I do what I do, it's why I get out of bed. And kind of ubiquitous thing. People don't often think about water when they're doing their daily activities, but it impacts everything we do. And I won't go through all the bits in here because you guys are switched on. You know what we're talking about. Floods, droughts, pollution, scarcity is a massive thing. So do you remember the day zero for Cape Town? They nearly ran out of water. Back in 2007, 2008, we nearly ran out of water. We had 15% in Wivenhoe Dam. So that's a scarcity angle. That's one area of my passion, but the other one is pollution as well. This river down here, clinically dead, it took them 30 years to bring back some life into it. So pollution has a big part to play. And why? Because we actually only have that much to play with, 0.02%. It's a beautiful blue planet that we live on, but most of it is not usable, or you have to put a lot of energy to actually make it usable, like they do in the UAE and Saudi. They desal little daylights out of it. But that's what we do. And historically, we've used rivers and streams as drains. That's where we dump stuff, which is a bit sad, but we are changing. I read an article that China spends nearly $5 billion a year on water quality improvement. That's crazy. Crazy numbers. This is nothing new. I'm not revolutionary saying anything new. Ban Ki-moon back in 2013 made this and this is one thing that got me more keen about water. We need to keep it clean and we need to use it more wisely. And just to kind of touch base and make it resonate with you what water is about, who's got one of those no pockets? I should actually ask the other question these days. Who hasn't got one? Nobody. Cool. Does anybody know what the water footprint of a mobile phone might be? Give me a number.
50 litres.
50 litres. Another number?
100.
100 litres. Okay. So somewhere between 900 and 13,000 litres, depending on which research you read and summarize. So what does that look like? About 20,000 of those bottles. That's just a phone. Something more topical right now, AI. The footprints of every day that we are chatting to ChatGPT, it's 85 million litres of water just to do all those queries every day. There's 35, 34 Olympic swimming pools every day. Now, yes, some of them get recycled, some of it goes up, comes back down in rain, etc., but that's the footprint. And we are electrifying this world. If you look at what's happening in China right now with the power stations that they're producing, 150 new nuclear reactors are going to go online between now and 2035, all require water. Just to run, let alone to make. And so water scarcity and the pollution of it and how we use it is so critical. Let's come back home. Reef. Okay. So I'm going to focus now. I'm going to give it a song and dance at the top. It's under threat. We know that. It's always in the news. You have the bleachings. You have in a changing climate. You've got all those other various threats there. We still have a lot of development. We are a developing country in the sense of sprawl and urban growth and change. We're still a sort of figure from one of my colleagues in Queensland government. So I put up this information. I should have put in this slide actually. I didn't. Denmark. Has anybody heard about the new Green Deal in Denmark? Anybody? Someone has to have heard about this. Really? Okay. Oh, you have? Cool. Do you want to tell everybody? So Denmark, I was over there a couple of weeks ago. Vibke, she's an amazing scientist, works with the ministry. They are so Denmark, small country, about 6-ish million people. Think of it like New Zealand. 68% of that landmass is barley. Okay, under cultivation. They have passed through Parliament bipartisan support across parties, across industry, across unions to take out 15% of that landmass and rewild it. $7 billion they've got. That's huge. I don't know of anything else in the world that's gone to that extreme. Small country, small space, that's huge. And that's where we, as a brain hub, me from water quality, you guys from conservation and vitamin, we should be tapping into that and helping them and give them insights, especially in a changing climate. Europe is starting to see conditions that we see year on year. We have a very variable climate here. We go from boom to bust, flood to drought, and they're starting to see that. So we can actually give them lots of advice on how to adapt and handle, especially with restoration. Anyway, that's a side note. I should have put a slide in, but I didn't. Direct use, classic. We all know about that on the reef as well. But what I'm going to focus on today is water quality, okay? I'm water, love water quality, going to hone in there. And when you guys are thinking about this, think about water quality, but also think about your disciplines and how your biodiversity or conservation projects or topics might link to water quality, because I think we should try and do that a bit more. So ultimately, what are we talking about? Land use and condition. And from my perspective, when that land use and condition, doesn't matter what it is, gets into contact with rainfall and runoff, we get losses. And when we get losses, we pollute. Not always, but most of the time. So in this space, this has been going around since 2003. There's a couple of things that if you want to get into the space, you have to get your head around. There's a lot of reviewing going on right now. New government, a lot of reviews, a lot of changes are coming on, and there's a lot of public consultation currently up. So that means they're putting out either strategies or policies or plans or legislation for the public to comment on. You guys are public. You guys should be adding your brains and your knowledge to those consultation periods to try and influence and adjust policy and legislation. So I'll talk a bit about the scientific consensus that came out August the 1st last year, just over a year ago. They're currently, the other ones that are happening is it's a review of the spatial management prioritisation. That's where we do stuff in the catchment. That's where we do our restoration. There's a review of the water quality targets, and there's a review of the practice management adoption targets. What does that mean? That means how we handle the land, how we manage the land. So I might be a sugarcane farmer, and how much urea or nitrate I can put on, or I might be a grazier. How do I manage my sediment erosion control? Okay. Riparian veg in there, wetlands is in there, all stuff with biodiversity and conservation. There's targets around those things as well. Lots of reviews going on. The main outcome, and it's going to go up for public consultation in September, so I encourage you yet again to put in a review of your own or collectively as a centre. I think that's probably a really smart thing to do. They want to make it a bit more holistic and inclusive, so they're going to still going to be water quality focused, but they want to whole of catchment restoration. Okay, and that sits squarely in your guys' wheelhouse. Build on the knowledge and experience, but also bring in traditional owners because it's something that was lacking, was kind of more tokenistic in the past. We did do lots of stuff with TOs, but now it's going to have front and centre, which is really good. More priority setting. This is an interesting one that I disagree with, and I can say that because I'm not a government employee anymore. Well, I'm on the secondment. I don't like when things become easy because things aren't easy. Things are complicated. What we need to make them is more clear, that's terrible English, clearer and more concise. When you are more specific with your clarity of talk and explaining science, you get more uptake. You get your point across. When you make things easy, two things happen. You miss stuff, people assume, and when you assume, you make an ass out of you and me. And that is so true. I have done probably 200 to 300 shared talks. I've never been punched, I've been threatened. But when you assume and you make it easy, that's what happens, you get conflict. But when you actually are clear and concise and put it all out there, it's amazing the conversations you can have with all types of people. And I challenge you that for the rest of your careers, is be more clear and concise. Don't say, oh, they won't understand, put it out there. We have farmers, does anybody know what a species sensitivity distribution is? No, okay, so in ecotoxicology world, I'm not an ecotoxicologist, we create these things called species sensitivity distributions. We grab all sorts of bugs, and I apologise, I'm an inorganic chemist, so just bear with me. All sorts of bugs, fish, frogs, algae, diatoms, that kind of stuff, and I've said that all probably terribly. We nuke it with a chemical and we build this curve of distribution about its impact. Then we produce what we call a guideline, a water quality guideline. We have farmers that have species sensitivity distributions in their pesticide management plan, in a book, in their shed, because we taught them not to be ecotoxicologists, but to know that that exists. And that's why water quality guidelines exist. And we have brought down walls, and by bringing down walls, you'll see later on, I'll show you some data, we are actually getting improvements. So I challenge you to not make it easy. Our world is not easy. The world is not easy. It's complicated, a bit clear and concise. Anyway, that's what they're also trying to do with the next plan, a lot more bottom-up work, TO work, value-based approach. This is the key, focusing on people, landscapes and water to achieve the water quality outcome, holistic thinking about the catchment restoration with an end goal of water quality. I won't go through this too much, but it's a QR code on here. Have a read. It's a massive document, but there's a lovely executive summary. I think there's 8 chapters. The scientific consensus statement is nothing new. It's been around since 2003. Every 5-ish years. It is the 2022, but it was only released last year in 24. I won't get into the details. But it reviewed over 4,000 publications, over 9,000 authors, and it sets where the current goals should be set for the reef and what needs to be achieved. These are the highlight conclusions. Number 1, land management and catchment modification is still impacting the hydrology and erosion and water quality. That's no brainer, still the same thing. Pollutant loads are elevated, still the same thing. There's like literally massive chapters behind each of these statements. So if you're interested, read. 3, poor water quality is still the main driver and mainly around fine sediments, nutrients and pesticides. There are other issues, but they're the main ones. Number 4, human-induced climate change is actually still the biggest threat, but water quality is something that we can tackle here in Australia, here in Queensland, and manage. And if we do that, we help with resilience. It's no different to you guys going to the gym, not having too many beers this afternoon, So you can bounce back. The younger you are, the more you can bounce. The older you get, it's harder to bounce. Trust me, I have to have a little bit less. But being healthy and resilient for the reef from a water quality perspective means the next cyclone in the Arctic, which was the Category 5 cyclone that hit us about 10 years ago now, I think. Been that long. Can bounce back. It can regenerate. Okay, so that's the concept of water quality. It's not going to save the reef, but it's going to help with its resilience and health. This is the key one I'll talk about later, but it's all about land management practice and where to get the improvements and where to do the restoration. This is another key one I'll talk about later. It's about locally engaging and making it locally relevant. It is pointless to produce a reef report card and then expect somebody in Emerald, who is a grains grower, who's 800 kilometres from the reef, to have any resonance, to relate. So that's a key one. I'll talk about that later. This is a cool one because I helped build the monitoring. It has been recognised as world leading, so I'm very happy about that. And the program still exists, which is really cool. But it's more than just the water quality catchment monitoring. There's lots of other monitoring there. Lots of people are doing a great job. And the other one is more effort, more out of the box thinking, more connecting groups like you into the reef space, because you guys have a different way of looking at catchments. We need that. We need to make improvements. There's a QR code, have a look. It's a good read. Sometimes it might send you to sleep, but it's got a lot of information. Someone's basically done a lit review for you on all those highlights. 4,000 papers of the latest information. Plus it's built on lit reviews essentially since 2003. So it's a wealth of information. They're the scientists that are involved. So let's now hone in a little bit. The carrot and the stick. And what am I doing for time? Not too bad. Everybody know about carrot and stick? Yeah, cool. I won't explain that. Reef long-term sustainability plan is a carrot approach. It's purely a framework that is being built between the Queensland and Australian governments around UNESCO. So you all have heard about the delisting of Great Barrier Reef. I won't go into it, but there's a QR code about it. That's the biggest umbrella for the reef world. The second one is the Reef Water Quality Improvement Plan, which is currently under review, and like I said, will go out in September for consultation. There's another carrot, okay? I'm just loading your brains now with background information. Lots of information there. Don't have the time today to go through it. We also have a stick in this space, okay? And it's reef regulations, okay? It's actually under statutory review right now in the new government, new review. It'll be out in November this year. So we'll see where the regs fall, but that's the stick kind of space or lever we have in this area. In the carrot space, we have these targets, beautiful goal objectives, bottom-up approach, lots of stuff around wetlands and riparian veg and grazing and best management practice to help water quality, to then help the objectives of a healthier reef. In there, also under review, is the Paddock to Reef monitoring program. There are 7 key components. So there's spatial, so satellite at each of these scales, the paddock, catchment, and marine. There's a model that's run at each of these scales. So there's a whole heap of paddock models that are run. I don't know if you guys know Hal Leakey, AppSim, Music. They're kind of the models that are used there. In here is a massive model called Source. It used to be run out of eWater, which is now defunct, I think. And that's the Catchment model, which links all together. And there's a massive model here around e-reefs. Okay, they all link. They all have spatial, satellite, and they all have monitoring and modeling components. Today, I am just going to focus just here in the catchment, just on water quality. Lots of multiple lines over there. It's going to that scientific consensus statement. I'm just going to hone in one little area. I need to hone in more to one specific toxic. The program monitors from down here in the Burnett area all the way up to the Isle of Pasco, gorgeous part of the country. If you ever get to do field work up there, amazing, pristine in some areas degraded. And we also have a little sister program here in Southeast Queensland, the poor forgotten cousin catchment management and water quality, but it does exist. QR code, lots of information, lots of data available for you guys. What's its purpose? It measures nutrients, sediments, and pesticides. It turns the nutrients and sediments into loads, daily and annual loads, every year. Been doing that since 2005. Every year, keep on doing it. heaps of data, and then we turn pesticides into a risk metric, which I'll talk about in a minute. And that's how toxic conglomerates or pesticides are to the environment. And we relate that down to species sensitivity, or an equivalent of a guideline, where we look at multiple chemicals. What does it look like? We have these little huts that we build. I actually helped build this one. Double wall, cyclone proof, off the grid telemetry. I can text any of the stations around Queensland right now. Go, give me an update status. Take a sample now. Give me some feedback. Also has full IP. Why do we do text and full IP? Or when things are lovely like today, you can muck around, have dashboards and widgets, and have 15-minute reporting coming back with all the data. But when a cyclone hits, you lose all that connectivity, and we have to text. Text still get through, so we have kind of like a fallback mechanism. We have these things called ISCO avalanches. Does anybody camp? Who camps? Yep, yeah, Angle or Waco in the back of your ute or in your caravan. That's what they are. So they're 18 grand each. Basically, they take discrete water quality samples. Why do we have two? We're collecting pesticides in one, sediments and nutrients in another. While we're doing that, we have to adhere to international and national standards. Our data is so valuable that our level of quality assurance and quality control has to be high. Primarily because the data that this program produces is where then the federal and state governments will invest. And if we give crap data, it goes crap to the modelers, they then spin the models, get crap data out, and then we waste our money, we invest in areas that are not needed. We deal with these critters, which I'm sure some of you also deal with. They're always fun. I helped install that. We had to put a net in, a special boat, and when you get in nipple deep with a 3-meter croc on the other bank, your heart still does this, no matter how much protection you have. In the water, we have pumps and probes. We have this thing is called an acoustic Doppler current profiler. Basically, it measures velocity in the waterway. But through backscatter, we can actually measure the particles of sand, and we can actually do real-time sediment loads through backscatter as well. Who fishes? Angler? Yep. Your fish finder? That's a fish finder, $38,000. It's expensive work we do. We also do benefit studies across. It's like an acoustic Doppler that's going down the bottom. Real-time monitoring, all sorts of chemicals, nitrate. We also have these little babies. We call them our microsites, where we discreetly place them a little bit less expensive. There's 980 waterways that export to Great Barrier Reef. And we have a very small budget. So we have to infill with different tiers. So that hut that I just showed you, somewhere between 120 to 190 grand to fully make and get going. These bottles and poles are cheap. Those ones about 20 grand. But we still do bottles and poles because some sites logistically just make sense. So I'll spend the next 10 minutes and the last 10 minutes, then we'll open up for discussion because I talk way too much and you need to keep you quiet. I've given you a heap of background. I'm going to show you some data now from that monitoring program. You'll remember the stuff about sticks and carrots I just spoke to you about. I've given you no detail, I realise, but there's a lot of information there. I'm going to show you what I think, while these are important, it might be something to do with golden nuggets that actually gets us over the threshold. Hold with me, it'll make sense at the end. So we're just going to focus on water quality, okay? And we're pretty much going to focus on two areas of the scientific consensus statement. It's around reducing our pollutant loads and having prioritised areas, okay? That's the focal point of the consensus statement I'm going to look at. And very much, we're going to focus on local effective management solutions involving landholders, Indigenous communities, broader community, policymakers, and that is important, okay? Really, really important. And that, I'm giving you the take-home message right now, but that's essentially how you get outcomes. Well, let's go through some data. So, do the carrots and sticks, do they achieve water quality outcomes? We've spent $3.7 billion so far around the higher level space, okay? That's what we've spent. Another 1.1 billion on its way over the next 10 years. Now, when you compare that to the Denmark deal, we're not even in the ballpark, but it's still a lot of money, okay? And we want to get outcomes because if we don't get outcomes, we're not going to help the reef, we're not going to help catchments. In a Queensland space, that's both federal and Queensland space, just at the Queensland space, another 0.4 billion coming on the next 10 years as well, okay? lots of carrot approaches. They subsidise changing a tractor to control traffic. They might do a stream bank restoration or a wetland restoration. There's lots of money going out there into the catchments to do different things in the terrestrial space for water quality improvement to help the resilience of the reef. Like I said, we still got the stick approach, but there's other sticks that exist. And I'm going to talk about one of them in a minute. So right now in the Paddock Reef program, I'm just focusing on rivers, creeks and streams. There's heaps of other monitoring going on. I'm really honing in here. So the messaging I'm giving you here is very focused now, okay? So they're not generic statements. They're very focused around water quality. And I'm talking specifically about water quality monitoring, not modelling. And even more specific, I'm going to talk about pesticide losses. Remember our little conceptual diagram? We have catchment condition and land use. We hit it with water and run and get runoff. Specifically, I'm just going to talk about pesticide losses. And the first example I'm talking to you about is the stick approach. So in 2002, and it took 10 years. Does anybody know what the AVPMA is? And I always get this wrong. The Australian Veterinary and Medicine and Pharmaceutical Authority. Basically, they're the group that allow chemicals into Australia. They register or allow the use of chemicals such as diuron. It's a herbicide, it's a residual herbicide, photosystem 2 inhibiting herbicide, so it knocks out chlorophyll, doesn't know about photosystem. So they allow it to come in. It took them 10 years from a stick approach to review the label use. Back in this period, you could use 3.8 grams per hectare, you got that right? And they essentially halved it because they knew there were some environmental issues. Some of our data was used as part of the review. They went, oh, this is not good. They also said you can only apply 60% to a crop. Okay, so we've also got a reduction there. And there's a restriction now during the wet season because you don't want to run it off. You don't want to get in the waterway, we don't want to go up to the reef. Now, this is Australia-wide stick. Yeah? So stick should work. Here's a site where we've been monitoring diuron since 2011. Each of these dots is a grab sample that's been in a bottle that's gone to a lab and been analysed for diuron. Don't know how many is there, there's no end value on there, but it'll be a couple of thousand. Here's our guideline values, and I haven't done the guideline talk, but just trust me, that's an ecologically relevant guideline. Do you see any pattern there? We've had a stick approach. We've halved the rate that's allowed legally. We've also made only 60% of the area can be applied. And in the high risk period, you can't apply it. Nothing. Heinrich, one of my students, looked at this data, no statistically detectable trend at all. Sticks. Are they important? Are they not? Okay, so let's carrot and stick it together. Maybe you need both. So in 2009, we started to promote the use of non-residual herbicides, the ones that don't stick around, so just simple knockdowns. We started publishing guidelines and exceedances of the guidelines. The number of those times those dots were above those lines in the sand, and there might be a risk going on in the environment. Stick, we talked about the label change. We actually created new guidelines, so there was some regulatory arm to actually start pointing the finger. And Biosecurity Queensland, plus some companies that produce these chemicals, started doing stewardship programs because they were seeing our data and going, well, something's going on here, we need to be on the front foot. Plus, they've got to protect their name. We'll talk about greenwashing, but we won't. What happened? Here's another site. Not as monitored for as long, but this is about 2013 to about last year. We see no significant change. This is multiple, this is 22 chemicals now. So each of these dots still a grab sample, but we've added them up through that species sensitivity distribution pesticide risk metric, and we can put a risk category to them, and we're seeing no change.
Ryan, when was the new regs and guidelines implemented?
I've got a slide
Oh,
for that.
sorry.
This might take a minute. So what do I think we need? So we have, Queensland's a big area. There's over 4,000 cane farmers. That's just one industry. We've got grazing, we've got hort, we've got mining, we've got QR use pesticides. Mains roads use pesticides, councils use pesticides. Huge area to deal with, okay? But we have done some targeted work. we started to produce this thing called the pesticide reporting portal. So as the lab produces the data, okay, it goes to this reporting portal. The scientists don't even get to see it before, except for the lab scientists. The people collecting it don't. The public and the scientists get to see it together. Why is that important? Transparency is key. Clear and concise is key. The Reef program, the whole Reef family, was put in front of the Senate inquiry, the federal government Senate inquiry. And one of the biggest sticking points that was hit on us was we weren't scientifically transparent or transparent at all. So we went, yeah, cool, fine. Our data's your data. Let's put it out straight away. So that was one of the first steps. The next thing we did is we developed this thing called the pesticide risk metric. So just looking at one pesticide, there's no point. We need to look at the ecologically relevant combination of pesticides. And so we developed this metric. We also then worked with farmers. We actually got them taking samples, because the first thing I always got when I did a shed talk, not my chemical, not coming off my farm. So we actually got them to take samples and went, oh, is that my value? So cheeky that even one farmer used his rainwater and sampled it. It had low concentrations of pesticides. And he went, no, that's impossible. I said, well, what do you mean? I said, it's a bit of, yeah, it's quite low for that creek there. He goes, yeah, I use my rainwater. I said, oh, interesting. So there was a wall being brought down because they started to do the science. Now, it's not our level of science, but it's engagement, okay? We did heaps of awareness programs and field trials. And like I mentioned before, that Blue Water program, it was funded by Great Barrier Foundation. They have species sensitivity distributions, a highly specialised field of science in their pesticide management plans for when they apply to spare crop or pests. Huge amounts of education. And in this one creek, which is one of the more polluted creeks in Queensland, south of Mackay, southwest of Mackay, called Sandy Creek, Homebush, we now have a statistically year on year, so this is about 2012 and this is about 2023, we have a year on year statistically decreasing signature of water quality because we've joined all those dots. We've provided transparent, trusted data. People are listening. We've got engagement with not only agronomists, but scientists. And here are all the different dates. So there's the data on label change. There's where our data became publicly available. This is when stewardship programs came on board. And this is when we really kicked off sitting down with the farmers and adjusting what they're doing in relation to water quality improvement. Unfortunately, we're not, so that's just for herbicides. For all pesticides, including insecticides and fungicides, we're not there yet, but we're bloody close. Bloody close. That's a seasonal man Kendall for those statisticians in the room. It looks at trend analysis, you know, about statistics and significance. So I don't teach you about that, but we're getting close. It's a really cool win story. Here's our pesticide reporting portal where the public get the same data as the scientists get in real time from the lab. Lots of information there. We believe in this. Data is a key foundation. Same for your discipline. Good data, robust data, transparent data. Put it out there. Put it all out there. And then you build your information. People gain knowledge. We get wisdom and change. There's a whole example of different things we're doing. And then we get golden nuggets. I don't have any time to talk about this, but this is a cool little project we're doing now where we're building tools for the farmers. It's called Pesticide Projector. It helps them choose more ecologically relevant pesticides. So they can do tank mix A versus tank mix B. And then they can choose a more ecologically sustainable one. Maybe they're in a high risk window, they're in the wet season and they know they're going to have to run off, so they can choose a less toxic one for the environment. Or they're actually in a non-high risk window and they might want to have better kill, they can choose a more toxic one. So that's a cool tool that's come out now. And the latest thing is we are talking, does anybody know who Ecomarkets Australia are? Yep. So they just launched the cassowary credit. Does everybody know about the cassowary credit? Please tell me you know about the cassowary credit. Look it up. So they started off with reef credits. It was primarily around dissolved nitrogen and sediment. We are now building a methodology with them for a pesticide credit, but it's not going to be a reef credit. It's going to be an Australian-wide credit. Why is that important? We need another lever. Governments can't fund all this change. We have to get philanthropy, we have to get big business, we have to get your Bezoses, your Musks, your whoever else has got billions of dollars to start funding. HSBC bought $30 million worth of reef credits, I believe, just recently. So we're going to create a pesticide credit, help stimulate, help farmers make a change, help them fix up their rigs, help them choose maybe a more expensive chemical that is more sustainable and less toxic for the environment. It's not the silver bullet. The carbon market, the biodiversity market, the water quality market, it's not going to fix everything, but it is a lever. It's part of the carrot stick solution and it's part of the golden nugget world. So do carrots and sticks achieve water quality improvements? In isolation, definitely no. But if you bring it all together with good advice, good data, then we actually are seeing it now, which is a really cool story. Any questions? That's me. I'm around occasionally, usually. Hopefully that resonated with you in some way. Hopefully you can take your conservation and biodiversity angles, which I don't understand at all, and maybe value add to the bigger picture. There's a lot of money coming online over the next 10 years. You should be tapping into that, having the water quality angle to help you guys do what you do as well. Thank you very much. Judy.
Can I jump in first, because then I have to dash off and read to my next meeting. But thank you so much. It's amazing. It's so huge.
Yeah, sorry, I overloaded you with information.
No, it was great. I've got lots and lots of QR codes to go away and digest. Something that I've been trying to think about recently, and I'd be really interested in your take on this, because we here do a lot of what can we do better for biodiversity, including the aquatic ones. But does this program give any other value proposition to the people who are applying these pesticides and managing these crops and whatever, other than, the stick carrot thing? Like, is there any framing around, not saying this is necessary, it's just something that I've been trying to understand where we're at with this in Queensland, but if you produce less pesticides, you could see an increase in yield because you're not disrupting the trophic system of the beneficial
soil health. Yep.
Yeah, and is there anything there that I can look up on your website?
In the scientific consensus statement, there is. To be honest, the value add co-benefits is something we haven't done well. And that's one of the outcomes of the new strategic, I can't say it, but to strategy that has come out clearly that we haven't thought about co-benefits. We've been so focused on water quality.
For good reason.
For good reason. And there is an argument, and Jim Shortall from Penn State University, who we brought over a few years ago, said you have to have the focus there, otherwise you lose focus and your Vegemite spread. He didn't say that because he's American, but that's what I'm translating for you guys. But by not having any focus on it, we're not getting the added benefits. So co-benefits and that kind of stuff is going to be a big section of the new strategy. And it's out in September for public consultation. So hit them hard, support it, and it'll probably get through or various government checklists for waste management.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. But yeah, you're 100% on mark. Yeah. And that's not just soil health, that's riparian restoration, that's wetland restoration, making it targeted where it's needed, co-benefits, and then there's the market aspect as well. Yeah. Any other questions? Shoot.
I have a question about the 2050 date.
Yes.
Why 2050, and is it gonna be too late? 2050.
Well, good question. So first of all, I'm not a marine scientist or biologist or like that. I'm an inorganic chemist. I think in some areas, yes, it might be too late. In other areas, I don't think it's as bad as what it is portrayed. And that's catchment to catchment. Different catchments have different pressures, different anthropogenic pressures especially. There's a bit around the scientific consensus statement which I didn't write or review around that urgency aspect, and it's one of the outcomes. We need to be a bit more lateral thinking outside the box because there is an urgency. And yet again, coming back to that resilience concept, climate's really going to kick our ass first. So we need even more so improving water quality so that it can bounce back. So the answer is I don't know, but the answer is I'm
just
semi-concerned.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those things about choosing a longer, like a time that allows, like, because there's a lag with all the interventions and seeing the change, so you don't want to sort of set yourself up to go.
It was a political decision.
But
Yeah.
It was also
I think
a
it's dirt.
a UNESCO
Yeah, yeah.
driven thing.
It seems like we've been going at it for so long. You
2003.
know what to do. They know exactly what
Yeah.
to do and what needs to be done and how much. Just why does it take so long?
So it's interesting. So I talked about
Yeah.
the new Green Deal in Denmark.
Yeah.
And I presented a little bit of that talk to this conference. And the first question I got from Denmark was, why don't you use a carrot? Stuff, sticks and carrots. And that a very different social construct. And you could probably talk to this. Like in Europe, the European Union comes over and just go, for pesticides, if there's a breach of a pesticide, they just ban it. It took us 10 years in this country to review one chemical. Do you know how many chemicals we use in this country? So there's a different social structure. And I think here we're very bottom up. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's probably a good thing. Whereas in different countries, it's very top down. And they get away with it over in Europe for some reason. Whereas I don't think you get away with it here.
But when it comes to COVID, like when that happened, we just went boom.
Yeah.
Everyone just did what they were told.
Yeah.
Followed the rules and
But I challenge, if you go and have a conversation just about water, the community, no one actually realizes how important water is for us, let alone ecosystem services, let alone biodiversity, let alone the reef. Yeah.
I mean, some of the stuff is about the ways we've communicated it have not resonated with the audiences.
Yes.
So if you, like we recently did an analysis for DETSI of all the comms and media about stewardship over the last, like across ag, across Queensland, and the way that industry talks about it, and they go, yeah, we're stewards, and for them that's their soil, their land, their water tank. And yet all of the government messaging is all about distal, like spatially distal things, like a reef or some water that's, like you said, few hundred kilometres away. It doesn't resonate, and so it's about how do we
bring it back. Make it locally relevant. And that project where I showed you we had a statistical improvement is because we did that. We sat down with the landholders, we spoke to all of them, we made it locally relevant, we talked about their backyard and their creek. We didn't even mention reef. That's where the funding came from. And then we had improvement.
Can I? I'm sorry.
Yeah, you had.
No, yeah, I'll talk a little.
This kind of feeds into the conversation. Given what you just said, would you then describe this sort of carrot stick golden nuggets scenario as one where the golden nuggets are more facilitating the carrots and sticks and actually have the intended effect? So it's not necessarily a separate mechanism, it's a facilitator.
Yeah, it's a needed mechanism. So what's the stick for roads? When you drive, you get fines, they have the radars, everybody slows down when it's the camera. Yeah. The carrot, we have ads on TV that try and encourage us not to speed, 1 kilometre over, kills, that kind of stuff. But really, you only get change because anyway, some people still speed. Okay, but education is the key. Being clear and concise with messaging, getting that information over, building from data to information to knowledge, then wisdom and change is what you want. And that's what I was talking about, the golden nugget. I think we forget. Some people just want to hit the sticks. Some people, we spend millions of dollars on changing gear on farms. And I reckon if you went to 95% of those farms that got that funding, that gear is sitting with dust doing nothing because we just threw a carrot at it. So you've got to bring all of them together. You can't have one in isolation.
Just to throw something else into this real quick that came from Simon Sinek, there's a great TED talk about this. What it sounds like you're describing is we spend a lot of time talking about what's and how's and not why.
Yeah. Yep. Agreed. Oh, sorry, there was one over here. You can go next.
Oh, yeah, okay, fantastic, amazing, great to hear about like Java over like such an massive area as well.
Do another PhD.
There's 30 or 40 in there.
Yeah, I was wondering, I guess like on the co-benefit side again, because it sounded like it was really trying to be more holistic, looking at like people, lens and stuff like that.
A new strategy, yes.
The reef strategy, sorry, yeah. And so as part of that, especially with water quality, you were mentioning one of the farmers just getting like their rainwater tank data and finding their pesticides and that.
Yeah.
In the past, has there been any pictures about like how the pesticides might impact like livestock health or human health or anything like that? Like in terms of the like human health thresholds and not just
Yeah.
uh
In the past, no, we've actually purposely steered. So I come from Queensland government.
Yeah.
Very siloed, very
Yeah.
bureaucratic. If you're in the environment department, you can't talk about health matters.
Right.
Okay? That's not to stop people like us. I've got a badge on now to put out products like that.
Yeah.
Europe does that really well.
Yeah.
They have huge issues. They're way worse than us, like ridiculously bad. And they do a lot of human health, which previously resonates with people.
yeah.
And they do these great infographics about pesticide drift getting into your rainwater tank or getting into the groundwater. Then you use lots of European countries rely heavily on groundwater as well. So yeah, it's a winner, and we are doing a little bit of that. So Rob Sluggott's project, which
We've
you're
got
on.
a project evaluating health, like locally health focused narratives and things. The trick with comms is to go, like, sorry, I'm being picky now, but you went, that's what works, and going, actually, we don't know, because sometimes risk communication and going, it's going to threaten your health can generate a whole bunch of
That's true.
pushbacks
Yeah.
as well. So we're actually working with farmers. One of the things also, women are farmers too, but they often get called farmers' wives, even though they do just as much work as the dudes. But often the perceptions of risk are different across gender. And so working about how the communication with male farmers versus female farmers shapes those responses and what sort of messages work for both, and is working through a female farmer to then encourage her male family members to operate differently. So
Yeah.
there's all sorts of stuff going on
And
there.
that's a
Yeah.
really cool point, because in that same area where that's sweet decreasing trend, pharmacist Rob Sluggott and team, which is this project you're talking about, they do a chemical stewardship one where they only talk to the ladies.
Yeah, okay.
And there's been more change because they've gone home and done some. Why are you using this chemical? Why aren't you wearing gloves? Why aren't you wearing a coat? Just that gender thing. And yet again, it's about information and knowledge, because a lot of these people actually want to be good stewards of their land. But they've been getting the advice from companies like Intertech Pivot, Bayer, Syngenta, and that's fine. That's where you would go. They had all the information. We have a role to play to provide another source of information based on good, robust, scientific, transparent data. And when you do, we get improvement. It'll be a long turnaround. I've got another talk around imidacloprid and neonicotinoid. If you ever want to watch, probably online somewhere. It's a cool one around. Actually, we should talk about that, because it's a huge social thing. Next week, maybe. Anyway, sorry, I keep on going. You've got a question.
Who's facilitating a lot of the extension work in that space at the moment? Is it the NRM groups and
Yeah.
that sort of thing, or?
So that 1.1 billion coming on in the next 10 years is being pushed through all the NRM groups, NRM bodies. Those who don't know what an NRM is, a natural resource management body. They govern, or they manage our catchments and waterways and land, I guess, ecosystem, biodiversity, all that kind of stuff. They do report cards, they have management plans. So they're getting the 1.1. That money of equivalent went to GBRF last time. Just give you a bit of politics here. GBRF got it, they then distributed it, then governments changed. They went, no, we're not using GBRF, we're now going to go to the NRM system. That's another social problem about the different bloody pipes. But yeah, that's where most of it is. The Queensland money is a bit different. Some of it goes to NRMs, but it's more grant application where pharmacists or cane growers or AgForce can apply and get money that way and do projects on ground.
Yeah.
But that's generally how it's pushed out. But the Reef Catchment Science Partnership, we also get some of that funding. That's why we exist. So it's kind of multifaceted, but mainly NRMs.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, reach out to your NRMs. Like if you guys, you should be building contacts. If you're doing Queensland stuff, I know you might be doing international world stuff, which is cool. But if you're doing Queensland stuff, and Australia, reach out to your NRMs. Another question? No. Just
No questions on Zoom.
So Ryan, a lot of this change sits at the sort of ground scale level with landowners, landholders. How do they see it? Do they see it as a stewardship problem? As well, we're trying to make the most money, and here come the outside people, the ecologists, they tell us, well, don't do that. Do this.
Yeah, good question.
So how do they see
I've
the
been
change coming?
called an effing FIFO scientist before. which is interesting. I actually don't think I am. I do fly in a lot, but I actually take a lot of time out of my life to sit down in the regions. So that's the first battle, is this Brisbane telling us what to do. There is that stigma that you probably have studied around regional Queensland versus Brisbane, Queensland or Southeast Queensland. So that's one of the hiccups. However, in saying that, when you do have a frank and fearless conversation around a coffee table, and I've sat down with many a landholder around a coffee table, it's interesting. I think I've only ever come across one thumb that wasn't a steward. He also called me a member of the pubic service, the little public service, in a public forum with about 100 people, and then he started to F-bomb me and call me like a couple of other words. As he's the only one, and we even had a chat after the not showcase, the public forum. If I got him on a bad day, he'd probably punch me. All of the others I've ever interacted, I've had cars run at me, but once you have a chat with them and you actually sit down and resonate with them, they want to be good stewards, but they've just been given data information from a different area.
And so when they're offered these voluntary programs, projects, markets, these sort of things, are they more willing to collaborate rather than?
So in that specific area where I showed you we have improvements, yes, but that's taken us since 2013 when we started putting serious effort in, serious scientific communication, serious economic extension. It's been a really long, because when I did my first ever talk up in Mariba, I mentioned the word water quality at no, it wasn't Mariba, it was Mackay, in a Kangaroo board meeting, and I think about 5 of the blokes, literally in tandem, were just abusing me. And these are professional people, so much so the CEO of Mackay Kangaroo has told them all to shut up, and that was appropriate, which is pretty epic. And whereas now I can go to that same group and I can mention water quality. Now there will still be some resentment because they come from a different angle. They're coming from trying to make money off the land. But I think there's been the lowering of the wall and there's more acceptance, and we can now have a chat about what you could do. Now they still have an economic business to make money. They want to pass it on to their family. That's their livelihood. So you still need to balance it. There's no silver bullet. There's no perfect solution. No matter what we do in the catchment, even you guys in your apartments or your houses or whatever you do, even when you drive, we all have a footprint. And what we're trying to do is just make people slightly tweak their footprint so it's improving, and we've improvement in our catchments and we've improved in.
All right, I think that's it, yeah? That was amazing. Can you help?